What's up guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about some brand new PlayStation 5 information. So this is coming from an interview that was published with Sony Interactive Entertainment's president and CEO Jim Ryan. And in this he talks about how there are unique unannounced features for the PlayStation 5 console. But before we get into today's video, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And make sure you guys ring that notification bell so that way you guys stay up to date with all the videos that are published on the channel. Well, let's get into this. So Business Insider Japan has actually published a new interview that they had with Sony's president and CEO Jim Ryan, and they talked about kind of Sony's whole thing after CES. So as we all know, at CES this year, Sony revealed the PlayStation 5 logo, and they also revealed a couple things about the PlayStation 5. They showed off this slide that says the PlayStation 5's hardware features will have 3D audio sound, haptics and adaptive triggers on the new PlayStation 5 controller, an ultra high-speed SSD, hardware-based ray tracing, and an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. So that was all that we got out of CES this year from Sony. I mean, we weren't really expecting anything at CES. CES is like typically more of like TVs and PC hardware rather than like consoles, but it was still interesting to see information about like the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 there as well. But we got a little bit more information about the PlayStation 5 through this interview. So if you guys want to read this for yourself, it'll be linked in the video description. You guys can open that up and check out this article, but let's get into it. One thing that they talked about in this interview was about the mitigation from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. So Jim Ryan says, quote, "During the mitigation from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, there will still be a great deal of PlayStation 4 users. That is very important, and we have an obligation to those users. In the same way, we need to work out new appeals for PlayStation 5. This year will be a tough but special year for us compared to previous console releases." And he continues by saying, "Each time a new console is released, the processor and graphics improve. Those are enticing, of course, but we still need to have special appeals as well. We already have confirmed the use of a solid-state drive. Having load times that are next to nothing is a major change. 3D audio and the haptic feedback support of the controller are also things that when you try them, you'll be surprised of how big of a change they are. Even just playing the racing game Gran Turismo Sport with the PlayStation 5 controller is a completely different experience. While it runs well with the previous controller, there is no going back after you experience the detailed road surface via haptic control and play using the adaptive triggers. But you know, there's still more unique elements for PlayStation 5 to come that separate it from previous consoles. The bigger differences have yet to be announced." And then he ends the interview by talking about the release window. He says, "I cannot comment on the timing of release or launch markets. However, the 3-month delay for the release of the PlayStation 4 in Japan was a decision that I was deeply involved in. There was reasonable ground for that decision, but these days I don't think that was a good idea. It was a decision made after much debate, but there may have been other options." So let's go ahead and break this down and discuss what he actually says in here. So at CES, Sony announced that there are over 100 million PlayStation 4 owners, and an issue that Sony is going to have to tackle this year is to be able to convert those 100 million plus PlayStation 4 users into PlayStation 5 users. So how are they going to do this? How are they going to be able to convince over 100 million people that the PlayStation 5 is worth upgrading to over their PlayStation 4? And one of the things he says is, of course, you know, the processor and graphics will improve. I mean, that's standard for every single console generation, is that we get new hardware that's more powerful, so games are obviously going to run better and look better. And with each passing generation, we're getting more and more unique experiences that just weren't technically possible on the last generation. So having games that are visually appealing is definitely something that can entice people to upgrade to, say, a PlayStation 5. But typically when a new console releases, there isn't like a massive jump in the way games actually look and perform from last generation to the new generation. I mean, if we just like look at history of like the PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 and the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One, like yeah, games looked better. We had games that were like cross-generational, so we had a bunch of like games like Call of Duty Ghosts. That was a game that came out on both systems, and that game specifically, you know, it ran on like the PlayStation 4 at like 1080p, ran on the Xbox One at 720p, and then ran below that on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. So yeah, you did get a resolution bump, so it played at a higher resolution. You had a couple other visual differences, but really there wasn't a huge difference for someone to justify, you know, getting a $400 or $500 console. Typically where we see like the biggest console generation differences are in games that come out like years into the console's lifespan. So like if you take a game such as like Halo 5 and then you compare that to Halo 4, now that's actually a pretty good comparison, because then that takes a game that came out like in the middle of this console generation we're in right now, compares it to a game that came out at like the end of the last generation, and you can actually see kind of a difference there. Whereas if you take games that came out, you know, the exact same time on 2 generations, then there's not really a ton of difference there. Like, also another example would be Breath of the Wild. You could get that on the Nintendo Switch, and you could also get it on the Wii U. And that also might be part of the problem, is that since you can get games like that on the last generation systems, people might not be as inclined to upgrade. So by having games that are exclusive to next gen would definitely be an incentive to get people to upgrade. But what he's saying here is that they need to have other things that appeal to people. So in all honesty, I don't think that having a better processor, graphics, and SSD are really going to make a huge difference to the average person. Like, that's just kind of standard, and it's what you come to expect when you buy a brand new console. But what he does mention here is the 3D audio and also the PlayStation 5 controller. So the 3D audio is going to be kind of interesting because the PlayStation 5 hardware will be able to support it, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to be able to just have 3D audio no matter what. You're probably going to need a specific speaker setup if you have it like hooked up to your TV, or you're probably going to need specific headphones. You're probably not going to be able to do it with a standard like 5.1 pair of headphones. And I think the PlayStation 5 controller is definitely going to be pretty cool. I mean, they also mention here that it'll have haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, but honestly, I think that that sort of a thing is kind of a gimmick. I mean, the Xbox One had like rumble packs and the triggers as well, and the Nintendo Switch was marketed as having like 3D rumble packs or whatever. And in all honesty, that kind of thing with like rumbles and like 3D vibrations and haptic feedback and that sort of thing isn't really that useful in my opinion. It's something that hardware manufacturers have been trying to push for a while now, but I just don't think it's going to be happening. I don't think the average person really cares that much about it. But back to the article, he says that there's more unique elements that separate it from previous consoles, and that the bigger differences have yet to be announced. So this is really the topic I wanted to make this video around, is what do you guys think the bigger differences are? So these are going to be the things that Sony is going to be marketing the PlayStation 5 with. So things possibly, I mean, this is something I've seen a lot of people throw around, is the possibility of backwards compatibility. I mean, we already know it's going to be backwards compatible with PlayStation 4. That's not what I'm talking about. But backwards compatibility with PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1. I think that would be a big selling point. If you could play any and all PlayStation games on your PlayStation 5, that'd be huge, because there's tons of people, including myself, that would love to go back and play older games on older systems, but many of us, we don't have those systems anymore, or you just don't want to like dig them out of boxes anymore. And you know, you already got your PlayStation 4, you know, you already got your console set up, so it's just more of a hassle to like go back and get those games, and you know, when you already have your new one set up. So it'd be a lot easier if everything just worked on one system. But I think that's like just about it. I don't know what other bigger differences it could be. Perhaps he's talking about performance, although I doubt that he would be. The latest rumors suggest that the PlayStation 5 is going to have like a 9.2 teraflop GPU, whereas the Xbox Series X is going to have like a 12 teraflop GPU. So the Xbox Series X is going to be more powerful, but I doubt that's what this bigger difference would be, is if somehow Sony was able to make their machine more powerful. I don't think that's like that bigger difference here. I've been over this before. It's basically impossible for them to change out the hardware that they have currently on the PlayStation 5, so that 9.2 teraflops is probably pretty much set in stone. It's probably what we're going to be getting later this year when the PlayStation 5 actually releases. But this is where you guys come in. I want you guys to comment down below what you guys think the bigger differences here will be, and what Sony will do with the PlayStation 5 to make it appeal to more people, for them to move on from their PlayStation 4. What do you guys think this is? What could Sony do to encourage people to buy a PlayStation 5? I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this in a comment down below. But lastly, for this video, let's talk about the release window. Basically, I mean, we know that it's going to be coming out sometime this year, and it's likely to release in either November or December, sometime during the holiday season, to compete with Microsoft's Xbox Series X. But specifically what he's talking about here in this last section of the interview is about the delay of certain regions' releases. So consoles haven't always released globally on the exact same day. There's been differences. So for some regions, the console might release a week later, might release 2 weeks later, or even like a month later. And what he was saying here is basically that the release of the PlayStation 4 in Japan was a 3-month delay from when we got it in the United States, and even from like, you know, Europe and other countries throughout the world. And he says that back then, he says that there was reasonable ground for that decision, so they had a reason why they delayed it. But as of now in 2020, he says that it probably wasn't a great decision, so it's likely that we're going to see a global release for the PlayStation 5, and we're not going to be getting certain regions at certain different times. We're all going to be getting PlayStation 5 on the exact same day. At least that's my take on it. What he's saying here is that we're most likely all going to get a global launch. There won't be any more delays for different regions, or at least maybe not a 3-month delay. I think maybe even just having a week delay would be acceptable for certain regions. I think having a 3-month delay is definitely very excessive and unnecessary. So that's it for the video today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know guys' thoughts on this in the comments down below. What do you guys think that Sony is going to be marketing for the PlayStation 5? What is going to be their go-to thing for as to why you should buy a PlayStation 5? And also let me know you guys' thoughts on everything else about this video, about the new PlayStation 5 controller, on the global release, and everything else too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.